Hello and welcome to Walker Tea Review. I'm Jason Walker, and this is your home, the consistent source for video tea reviews. And why video? Why not just write up the notes? Because there's a real value in watching to see how something is done, so that you can produce the same results by following the same steps. Tea is a delicate, the ideal cup of tea is a delicate combination of leaf, water, temperature, time. All these things have to be brought together at the right point so that you can really uncover that cup of tea that makes you happy. Now we've got a little bit of equipment with us today. We've got a nice teapot, clay teapot that we're going to be using because we've got an oolong, and I find that oolongs do especially well. Oftentimes better than other kinds of tea with a clay teapot like this. We have a aroma cup set that we're going to be using, and you'll be able to see how that's used, and perhaps you may want to get a aroma cup set for yourself. Now let's go ahead and start off this tea so we can get it going and talk a little bit about it more as we go along. This is a Formosa Fancy. This is a type of Taiwanese oolong. Got out my regular teaspoon here, and I take out a scoop here that's filling up and overflowing out the sides of the spoon here. Now this is about believe it or not, this is about a 6-ounce size teacup, or teapot rather, and that one scoop's not really covering the bottom of my pot. So I'm going to take, here's a second scoop, put that in, shake it around a little bit, see how that does. And that looks pretty good, so that should be enough for that right now. Put that lid back on for just a few minutes as we pour this tea. This water has been brought to a boil, and it's been cooling as I've been talking, so it's been about 40 seconds or so off of the boil. And again, that was a light early boil. Didn't really get it to a full heavy rolling boil. I generally find the full heavy boil is not always that necessary. It can flatten out your water, at least that's what some research tends to indicate, that boiling takes out more oxygen in the water. So that's why we allow it to cool a little bit as well, because we're going to give this some time to steep. If you're using a much higher temperature closer to boiling, you could do a briefer steeping, but that's going to sit well for a few seconds here as we kind of introduce this tea. This is from the Mark T. Wendell Tea Company. This is their ExtraFancyFormosa. A package like this size is a 1/4 pound, or as it says, 113 grams. And you can find this size for $33.50 on Wendell's website currently. Wendell's been in the tea business for quite a while. They've been known for their Chinese teas, their Hukwa, which is a kind of Lapsang Souchong, a black tea. One of the better known brands or names in the Lapsang Souchong category. Okay, so this is a Taiwanese, it's a summer kind of oolong, in that it is a later harvest. And you know what, I'm going to let that steep just a little bit longer, but only for a few more seconds, because I do want to talk about this dry leaf. A couple of things we want to note. And before I really get into it, I should mention a Fancy Formosa is usually a summertime harvest. And what has happened is that a leaf hopper, I think a jasset is the other name that you may hear, a kind of insect that attacks the leaf, bites it, causes a reaction. That reaction is a defense mechanism of the tea leaf, and in that process it releases an aroma. It changes the color of the leaf, and it's some of those characteristic notes that become associated with a nice Formosa Fancy and or Oriental Beauty. Okay, so let's set that aside for just a minute, because I think I have enough time on this leaf. I don't want to steep it too long. So let's go ahead, cut out my fairness pitcher, because it's going to allow us to look at the color a little bit, and we're going to pour. Yeah, that's a good color here. If you're steeping along at home, I hope you're pouring now, if you've been following us up to this point. Otherwise, some of the tastes are going to be a little off. But this should be just fine. Now you notice I'm getting those last few drops. They're usually some of the stronger, most potent drops, and that's why we're taking that extra time to shake those out. Okay. Now, I'll set this aside because we do want to talk about the wet leaf and the liquor, of course, but let's get into this. Let's talk about the dry leaf first. Okay, you're getting some, first off, I should say there's nothing really out of the ordinary, is what I'm trying to say, as far as these leaves go, the aroma here. You're getting things that are kind of a little bit woody. You're getting a sweet, sappy type of wood note here. Other Formosa fancies are similar summer type of this type of tea will have a kind of an orange blossom type of sweetness to them. So there could be a kind of orange or apricot note that you may pick up. If anything, this one has more of an apricot than an orange. A light apricot, especially apricot, kind of dried apricot, the strength in that, a little more compounded, intense notes, apricot notes on a dried apricot, and that's kind of what you're getting here. A little bit of apricot, with that warm, sappy type note. Now, looking at these leaves, you're going to notice that these have a lot of interesting colors to them. You are getting a kind of a rust brown, so it's got a bit of a reddish brown to it. You're getting a deeper, a little bit of a gray brown, like a seal brown or russet type of color. And then, as well, you are getting some of the tips, which have a silvery white element to them. So, a range of colors that you can look at here. So, and what that also means is, or those colors come from, the larger size leaves that have that kind of grayish brown to coppery red type of color, rust type of colors, down to the smaller, more delicate needles, like we're finding several needles in here, a good mix of needles actually throughout, which will be silvery. They're going to be smaller, of course. They're going to look like little tips of immature or very young leaves. And so that's what you're getting here. Your large, more mature leaves can be connected to those. Here's an example of a leaf and bud connected together here. Those do exist and can be found here. So that really takes care of this dry leaf. I would say one of the more welcome or something to look for is a good balance leaning over more towards those needles, those white fuzzy aspect, those white fuzzy tips or buds there. So that's a positive mark for this tea. It does have plenty of needles. Okay, so seal that up. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about our wet leaf here. Okay, let's go ahead and get a smell first. One more time. Okay. There is some fragrance coming off of this, and it is a little bit of a sweet, damp tobacco. It's like if you ever open a pack of chewing tobacco, it's got a nice, heavy, sweet, tobacco-y type note to it. With that, a little bit of a peachy type of note to it, although that's more subtle. It's not really a pronounced and obvious peach. And just a little bit of something kind of zesty. Something about it is a little bit of an orange peel type note. So you are getting a little bit of peach, a little bit of that orange. So there's a fruit component there, combined with it's got a deeper, richer, heavier type of, like I said, sweet wet, moist tobacco component there. Those are the dominant elements coming off of here. Now these leaves, let's go ahead. There's a few here that stuck to my lid that I want to return to the pot because I want to pull out a few more representative, more representative leaves here. For example, here's a set, good example of those leaves that can be a richer reddish gray color. This one's become more of a consistent coppery type color, well, rust at least, I would say. And it's a leaf set. Leaf. There's a nice tip or bud there. Another third leaf that got broken off, so it's just a very base of that leaf, I should say, as it connects to that stem area. Here's a nice olive drab needle that has been affected by the steeping process. It's no longer that silvery fuzzy look about it. And yeah, these leaves, they're going to be a little bit thicker feel. They're going to be a little less elastic because these are older or later, more mature type of leaf. They're going to have more strength or sturdiness to them. Okay, so that really covers what's cooling off now, getting more plummy type of notes here. Okay, so that's pleasant as well. Actually, as it cools, and by the way, because this cools well and brings out other notes, that's why this tea can often be done quite well as a cold brewed tea. Take a couple of, you got a liter size bottle, glass or jar, I should say. I put in about 2 to 3 good sized teaspoons. Fill it with cold water, put that in a refrigerator overnight. That becomes a nice cold brewed tea. Okay. Now, we have been talking about this aroma cup, and I do want to get to that. So first off, let's go ahead and use the aroma cup. First off, you take your taller cup and fill, I would say 4/5 of the way. Yeah. Or no, I should say that's more like 2/3 of the way, somewhere in there. You don't want to get too high up because next thing you're going to do is you're going to cover that like that, kind of mushroom cap that. Let that sit for a minute. Let those aromas build up in there. So you can also smell, you take your aromas from your pitcher as well. But you do want to look at that color. That's a nice amber color. There's a, it's got clarity, but in the light you can hold it up and you can actually see the fuzz from the down from those needles that's floating around in there. And that's nice. That's kind of a pleasant thing to see. Again, kind of light amber type of color. Watered down honey kind of note there. So it does have a rich reddish color there as well. Now, we talked about our liquor. Let's go ahead and get a good smell of the aroma. Now, the purpose of the aroma cup is, one, the taller one is for smelling. The bottom one is for the tasting aspect. So to do that, you want to quickly turn it over. You want to kind of angle your lid over to the side a little bit and just kind of unscrew it. And then quickly smell. Because there's a lot of aroma trapped in here, or was trapped in here. Okay, again, a little bit of that peachy, coppery type, peachy type notes coming off, a little bit of the plummy aspect there. I could actually sip from this, which I guess I will, but then I'll sip from the larger cup as well. Because as it cools at different temperatures, it reveals different flavor components a lot of times. For example, I found in the smaller cup, the flavor components weren't really that pronounced. So I'm going to move on and get a deeper, richer sip from this cup. The apricots there, a little bit of that sappy wood type of note that we mentioned. So there's some astringency here, and I would say it's not a heavy astringency, it's a moderate level of astringency, and it really sticks on the front roof of your mouth, less so on the sides, a little bit of the middle of the tongue. Actually kind of numbs the front area of the tongue. At least that sip did. You get a bit of a, how should I say, a dry stickiness. Think if you had peanut butter, take away the peanut butter taste. It's that kind of sticky feel in your mouth, as if you're fighting with something. But of course, there's nothing there. It's very airy. It just feels like there's something that you have just a piece of gum you've chewed on for 2 days, and you're still fighting with it there. That's the kind of feel that you get in there. So again, there's the taste component, and there's all the other components: the texture, the aftertaste. The aftertaste on this one is quite fleeting. There's still a little bit of something there, but it's not really enough to really grasp onto. So that's not. It's not really the most desired. You want something a little fuller, a little richer in its story. Brisk, any kind of, I should say, bitterness? No, not really. Just that kind of dry wood type of feel, dry sappy type of feel in the mouth now. So, looking at this tea as a whole, comparing it to other Formosa fancies and that ilk, I would give this tea an 87. It has some of the components. It does have some of those plummy apricot type notes that we found in the wet leaf, a little bit in the liquor, and some of the dry leaf as well. Again, the texture in the liquor was, it did have some interesting components. It wasn't as smooth. I've had some that have more of a silken type of feel in the mouth, and that also had more of an extended, richer, sweeter, still lingering fruity component. Not the sweet aspect of the fruit, but the actual other taste of the fruit, like an apricot type, that lingered in the mouth in the aftertaste there. And so this one didn't bring as much of that out as some others did. If you want to do this as a cold brew, it could work quite well. It would bring out some of those, some components. And because you're going to be using extra leaf, you've got a good amount of volume here to do that with. So that's why we give this tea the 87 that it got. Come back and join us next time, where you're going to be able to, again, experience this by video so you can follow the steps to see the results and know what the full story of the tea here is. And that's here at Walker Tea Review.